It's the 13th of January, a special day for those who live in the heart of Canton Appenzell. Here in Urnesch, preparations for rather strange goings-on get underway as early as 5 o'clock in the morning. Silvesterklausen, or New Year's Mummers, is held on the old New Year's Eve. This winter tradition is celebrated enthusiastically here. It's a good example of how passionately customs are cherished in this tiny Swiss canton. These mystical figures appear everywhere out of the darkness. The mummers come from the hamlets surrounding Urnesch and neighboring communities. Celebrating the power of nature is the group known as the Naturals. After the dancing and ringing of the cowbells, a Zäuerli, a yodel without words, is sung. The mummers are rewarded with a glass of white wine, hot fruit wine, mulled wine, or perhaps a small cash donation. In reality, the fixed smile of each doll-like female mask conceals a man. But the true identities of the figures often remain a secret, even though everybody knows almost everybody here. These handsome ones move from farmstead to farmstead along the route, bringing good wishes for the new year. In stark contrast to the handsome ones and the naturals are the ugly ones, primitive figures with fearsome masks and costumes, taken directly from nature. The roots of Silvesterklausen are to be found in the monastery schools of northern France. There, on St. Nicholas's Day, the pupils had the right to elect a school bishop who held office for a single day and was responsible for much prankish behavior and general mischief. In 1663, the New Year mummers custom in Appenzell was criticized by the church as encouraging behavior unworthy of a Christian. Until the end of the 19th century, the noisy happenings were often forbidden by the authorities, but this time-honored winter tradition was never seriously threatened by such restrictions. Wood is the only natural resource in Appenzell. From time immemorial, it has provided local people with work and a secure income. So it's no wonder that one of the Appenzell hinterland's special customs, known as das Block, or the log, celebrates this blessing of nature. Several weeks before the festival, the community forester of Urnesch has approved the felling of a mighty fir tree. From its trunk, the log is sawn. Loading this 6-meter length of timber demands physical strength and considerable skill in using the traditional implements of the early forestry workers. In contrast to the communities of Hundwil, Stein, and Schwellbrunn, This custom only takes place in Urnesh, and at the most every 2 years. Furthermore, it's performed by grown men rather than by youths. On the day before Shrove Monday, a strange vehicle is made ready. The more than 2 cubic meter, that's 70 cubic foot log, is always prepared in accordance with the same ritual. All the members of the 50-strong log society already know their tasks by the time preparations are being made for the big day. 4 o'clock in the morning at an inn in the Urnesh Valley. 3 weeks earlier, the log assembly had already allocated a particular figure to each member of the team. They're transformed into heralds, huntsmen, alpine herdsmen, and tradesmen associated with wood, who must closely resemble the originals. The clown-like figures, Kesselbuben, who will accompany the procession, are an exception in this respect. Here, too, a wordless yodel is performed after eating the traditional flour soup and before the chairman addresses the assembly.
Appell, Feindlerwalter, Frick Köbi, Joas Schorsch, Mönde Bisch.
At 6:15 comes the sign to prepare for departure. The oven is fired up by the smith. On this cold, wet morning, it's unlikely to keep people warm, but the important thing is that the fir branches give off smoke. The chairman issues the order. Get set. Forward march. The route leads from Urnesh to Herizau and back, a strenuous march in the hilly Appenzell interior, but no problem for the tough local people. At daybreak comes the first halt, and a glass of hot coffee by the side of the road. A single horseman leads the way, followed by 4 heralds, and the 20-person procession team made up of farmers, huntsmen, carpenters, forestry workers, and herdsmen. The wagon attendant walks alongside the log on which are seated 2 impromptu musicians and a smith. High up at the front is the carter, whose job it is to keep this strange procession moving. As befitting his social standing, the forester brings up the rear of the procession on horseback. Shortly before midday, the procession reaches Herizau, the cantonal capital. The clown figures swarm around the procession, tirelessly seeking donations. No path is too long for them, no window too high. These young people have to work their way up in the hierarchy of the log society. The bear, the heraldic beast of Appenzell, looks for victims and is only kept under control with difficulty by the bear trainer. On the return journey, a rather strange meeting takes place. According to tradition, friends of the log society ride towards the log and provide a reception committee. In their case, there's no order in the procession, reminding one more of carnival festivities than of a serious custom. This year, their motto is, "We're the merry woodcutter lads." After a warm welcome, the 2 groups travel together for the last few kilometers back to Urnesh. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the first clowns reach the village square, the last opportunity to fill their collection boxes and win the award for the highest takings of the day. The destination has been reached, but the day is far from over. After addressing the crowd, the chairman auctions the log.
Wer macht den Pott? Messen dort 2,02 Kubik.
Usually it's carpenters, roofers, or master joiners, and perhaps people who are planning a building conversion, who bid against each other at the auction. This time a surprise bid is made by an onlooker.
910 Franken zum ersten.
In this case, the purpose to which the special piece of wood will be put is uncertain. But the lady in question will surely find a place of honor for the log. After all, it's a high-grade building timber of great sentimental value, acquired on a memorable day. In Appenzell, the annual ascent to the Alp also takes place in accordance with old customs. The appearance of many Appenzell farmers is indicative of their social standing and is especially impressive here because on this day, the farmer puts all his livestock on show in their full splendor. Today, the festively decorated procession started out early because the weather report predicted that, although only May, it will be hot. The aim is to reach the high alpine pasture inside 5 hours. The goat boy and his herd of white Appenzell goats set a brisk pace. They're followed by the Sen, who is a combination of herdsman and dairyman, 3 bell cows, assistant herdsmen, and a long line of brown cattle. After leaving Urnesh, the herdsmen are offered refreshment as they pass because it would be difficult to stop the orderly procession. Shortly before reaching the pasture, the bell cows are relieved of their heavy burdens. With rhythmic steps and accompanied by the sounds of the 3 bells, the group takes possession of the Alp for the short summer season. Traditional values are firmly rooted. Here, this is clearly shown by hauling up the ledi, a horse-drawn equipment cart. It carries the wooden utensils for processing milk. However, for hygienic and economic reasons, these tools are no longer used because butter and cheese making directly on the Alp have become very rare. Soon the helpers will return to the valley. Only the Sen and his animals will remain. For the next 2.5 months, he will lead a Spartan, lonely life, surrounded by the magnificent scenery at the foot of the Sentis mountain. In the middle of the alpine pasture season in Appenzell, the Gelebte is held. This herdsman's festival takes place on the high pasture. The human wheel turns to the strains of an original Appenzell string group. Another happy open-air festival is held on the Boulevards, a place where local people meet and outsiders can admire colorful folk culture. In the canton of Appenzell, the alpine pastures are carefully used and cared for. At the livestock shows in autumn, the pride and joy of the local farming community is on display. These traditional exhibitions are held here in Stein and in many other towns in the canton. The Sens wear their traditional costumes and look on expectantly as their animals are examined and assessed. One could gain the impression that dairying and livestock farming are the predominant occupations in Appenzell. In fact, in Appenzell Außerrhoden, only about 8% of the population earns a living from farming. In Appenzell Innerrhoden, slightly more. However, with their tradition-conscious attitudes and actions, the farmers do a lot to ensure that the old cantonal customs are carefully maintained and are passed on to the next generation as a matter of course. A few decades ago, it looked as though some of the customs in Appenzell would die out. But as a result of the commitment and enthusiasm of many young people, the old traditions are being revived. They tend to make an indelible impression on the youngest generation, leaving behind a strong feeling for custom and tradition. The last day of the old year, and off they go again, the mystical Silvesterkloise in their primitive costumes. The origins of most customs in the canton of Appenzell are not widely known, but they are rooted deeply in its inhabitants. These customs belong to their lives in the same way that nature and the different seasons do, customs which change only slowly and contribute to the very identity of the Appenzell people. The canton of Appenzell, a highly distinctive part of Switzerland, whose people are special and whose folk culture can be experienced in a very tangible way. A folk culture which affects and arouses enthusiasm in equal measure.